When it comes to the war machines of Warhammer 40k, no faction does it better than the Greenskins. Those iconic ramshackled vehicles are some of the best in the entire game, and in today's deep dive, we're going to explore the many vehicles of the Orks. Now before we get into that, we have to understand why vehicles are so important to the biology of the Orks. Almost all Orks possess an inherent need to go fast. There is something about speed that fulfills some deep-seated desire within each Greenskin. Just like the thunder of guns, the clink of tracks, or the din of battle, Orks crave speed. They like to feel the wind whipping into their faces and to hear the throaty roar of supercharged engines. It is hardly a surprise that bikes and buggies of all kinds are popular within the Ork cultures. These upgun vehicles may not be as sturdy as those within the Imperium, but they are cheap, they can pack a massive amount of firepower, and most important of all, they can achieve truly suicidal speed. However, this addiction to the sensation of speed isn't only satisfied by the vehicles of the Orks. The more primitive-minded Greenskins have figured out a way to indulge in high-speed charges astride specially bred squigs. From the squig hogs to the squigosauruses, these squig riders are just as fast as the exhaust-belching trucks and bikes of the standard Ork tribes. Within almost every Ork WOG, these two factions compete in gruesome and deadly races to see which mount can get them stuck in the fastest. The living breathing monsters or the metal and oil beasts. Now let's kick things off with one of my favorite vehicles, the Battle Wagon. An Ork army of almost any size will utilize a war machine they like to call a battle wagon. These ramshackle assault tanks are deadlier than an entire mob of deranged greenskins. Not only do they have enough firepower to take out an Imperial Knight or even a flying Hive Tyrant, but they carry a terrifyingly large amount of Ork boys ready to jump out and tear the enemy to pieces. Ork battle wagons are as diverse in construction and the weapons that they use as the greenskins who created them. It's really up to the imagination and resources of the mech as to how threatening these rolling doom machines can be. For the most part, a battle wagon always possesses a heavy chassis, sometimes salvaged from other suitable vehicles such as an Imperial tank or a heavy armored transport. The stronger the mech can make the core of its machine, the more likely it is to make it to the enemy's front line. The truly clever or ambitious Orks will custom build the entire vehicle, creating their heavy tank from scrap metal and looted bits. The actual term of the battle wagon seems to refer to the overall category of a large Ork armored vehicle. The battle wagon itself can be wheeled, tracked, or a combination of the two. While most battle wagons do have specialized battlefield roles, for the most part the standard battle wagon, if you can call an Ork vehicle standard, it's going to have multiple turrets either possessing big shooters, rockets, or flamethrowers. It's also going to have a stick bomb chukka, which is a crude mechanism that lobs volleys of stick bombs into the midst of the foe, also a wrecking ball, which is usually just some type of spiked heavy object that's mounted onto the vehicle and then swung at the enemy to crash into it. They also have a grabbing claw, which is mounted on a pivoting crane arm and it's controlled by a number of cunning levers, and the grabbing claw's purpose is to hold on to enemy tanks or enemy vehicles to prevent them from running away. And that's when the Orks inside can use what is called a boarding plank, which spikes into the enemy vehicle, and then the Ork boys can then jump onto the enemy tank and assault it there. There also exist many sub-type of battle wagons amongst the Ork forces. The titles such as Lungburster, Gobsmasher, Crusher, Bone Crusher, Gore Speeder, and Daka Wagon are used by the Orks to describe each customized battle wagon specific role. For example, the Lungbuster and the Gobsmasher are armed with large, noisy cannons, while the Crusher is outfitted with a spiked death roller on the front, usually steamrolling over the enemy infantry. The Gore Speeder is a popular vehicle with the Speed Freaks and the Evil Sons, who maximize its transport capability to deliver a larger mob of Orks into the thick of the fighting. The main distinction of these specialized battle wagons is the main weapon that they use. For example, when you're looking at range weaponry, an Ork battle wagon will usually either have a zap gun, which fire unstable bolts of lightning that have the potential to punch through the hull of an enemy heavy vehicle amidst a crackling shower of spark, but it has a tendency to overload and electrocute the operating gunner. It could also be loaded with a laba. A laba is just a large, noisy, mortar-like weapon that is mounted onto the battle wagon. It could also be equipped with a cannon, which looks like a standard Imperial artillery piece that fires anti-tank shells or fused fragmentation rounds. And finally, the kill cannon, which has the power to punch straight through a Titan's force field, but it's extremely inaccurate, because again, it's on top of a ramshackled assault tank. And just like other Ork vehicles, a battle wagon will continue to be customized as it grows to become an even larger contraption as its owner adds more weapons, extra fighting gantries, and new engines, until finally a battle wagon has grown into a true battle fortress. A battle fortress is just a massive battle wagon. It's expanded to the size and armament capacity of an Imperial Guard Super Heavy tank. Such vehicles are favorite mounts for the most powerful of Ork war bosses. These bigger battle wagons can be armed with super cannons, which sacrifice all of the other weaponries to mount this huge artillery piece. Most often this weapon is nothing more sophisticated than a looted Imperial Earthshaker cannon, but it's extremely deadly. Amongst the Ork clans, the Goths and the Evil Sons dislike the use of a super cannon, preferring weapons that allow them to get directly into the fray, but the Bad Moons, the Blood Axes, and the Death Skulls greatly enjoy the sheer power of this artillery piece, and have been known to unleash the power of a super cannon upon their enemies with devastating effect. When they don't use a super cannon, some mechs customize the battle wagon to carry a lift-a-droppa. The lift-a-droppa makes use of unknown tractor beam technology to pick up and move objects around the environment with anti-gravitic ease. Battle wagons outfitted with the lift-a-droppa are known as lift wagons. The big problem with the lift-a-droppa is that the weapon is powered by an atom smasher reactor, which mechs for some reason really like to overload, and then it just explodes and destroys the entire battle wagon. Intelligent Ork war bosses or big mechs usually have an entire formation of battle wagons, the most famous of which is on Armageddon, and it's called the Bliss Brigade. It is a motorized formation comprising of a large number of battle wagons, and the enemy will usually hear the Blitz Brigade before they actually see them as they fire their weapons and they rumble across the battlefield. When the Blitz Brigade finally smashes through the enemy front lines, it crushes defenders and defenses alike beneath their massive bulk. The initial wave is sometimes tons of boys eager to get into the fight at the earliest possible opportunity, but the role of the Blitz Brigade is primarily to destroy and not deploy. And that's because even without all of their passengers, the sudden and devastating assault of the Blitz Brigade has broken many enemy tank lines with its extreme use of firepower. Now let's move on to one of the most important vehicles in any Ork player's list, the truck. An avalanche of smoke barrels towards the Imperial front lines. Guardsmen scramble to their defensive positions, their minds unable to understand what their eyes perceive. These clouds are so dark and putrid, they block out the sun. Could the Greenskins have the technology to control the weather? As confusion begins to spread, the veteran guardsmen ready themselves. They know what this smog is. The exhaust fumes of a terrifyingly large greenskin caravan barreling down the battlefield. As artillery barrages let loose towards the encroaching smoke, the ramshackled machines of the Orks come into view. Among the war bikes, death copters, and battle wagons, a smaller but more numerous vehicle takes the front stage. These war engines are jam-packed with Ork warriors, roaring in anticipation of the slaughter to come. These deadly transports are known as Ork trucks, and no proper Ork assault is complete without these vehicles. Ork trucks are primarily built for speed, and usually have little in the way of armor plating. A direct hit upon a truck can cause it to come apart in a clattering, cartwheeling pile of burning wreckage. However, being Orks, they are also addicted to smashing in heads, and will gladly ride to war on these lightweight vehicles so that they can get to grips with the enemy as quickly as possible. Because trucks are so light, it is easy to bail out when they crash, and it is just as likely that incoming fire will merely smash apart some unimportant scrap that the driver only hammered in so that he can keep an eye on it and the other boys wouldn't steal it. Orks will customize their trucks in accordance to their clan's liking. A Goth vehicle will be greasy and plain, with a large crew compartment and a heavy spiked wrecking ball for crumping enemy tanks. Evil Sun's trucks always have a turbocharged engine and a red paint job, whereas the Snakebites decorate their vehicles to resemble their totem animals, and are not above patching them back together with old lengths of rope, squig-hide tarps, and planks of wood. Death Skull trucks tend to look suspiciously like hastily painted blue versions of those belonging to other clans, while Blood Axe dab their trucks in garish camouflage patterns, and have a habit of decking them out to look suspiciously imperial. The most ostentatious are those used by the Bad Moons, which often sport squig-hide seats, deafening loudspeakers, smoke pipes, and black and yellow flames along the bodywork. Meanwhile, the ragtag trucks that carry freebooter mobs into battle boast jolly Ork glyphs, rust hull spikes, and loot hanging hooks. Some even mount rusted plank arrangements that allow the greenskin pirates to put alongside an enemy vehicle and stage a perilous high-speed boarding action. More than one packed troop transport or a lumbering battle tank has fallen to this deranged tactic, left blazing in the freebooters' wake as the truck roars away amidst the din of a powerful engine. Most tribes make widespread use of these trucks to ferry greenskins into battle, fielding vast convoys that raise mile-wide dust trails in their wake. The power of this formation is terrifying. It is almost impossible to cause enough damage against such a numerous, fast-moving armored transport to halt the Ork assault before it connects. For every truck that comes apart in a shower of wreckage and greenskin corpses, another 3 swerve through the maelstrom of fire to crash into the enemy lines. Mob after mob of orcs barrel out of these blazing transports to bury the horrified foe, while those vehicles that have survived the reckless charge careen around the battlefield, guns blazing and crews whooping as they vent their fury to their overwhelmed foe. Now let's move on to an awesome vehicle within the greenskins, but one that is special to me because I created my own homebrew lore for a campaign that I ran with the Deathkiller War Trike. When speed freaks hurtle into battle, they are led by the fastest and killiest boss orcs around. Some of these prefer riding into war aboard a rumbling battle wagon or a truck with their entourage of boys around them. Yet for the truly velocity-obsessed, nothing short of being at the front lines will do. Such lunatic speed bosses race into the fray aboard Deathkiller War Trikes. Fast-moving fighting platforms, Deathkiller War Trikes make little concession to the armored protection of their riders. After all, what boss wants to be seen cowering behind slabs of scrap iron when they should be getting stuck in? Instead, speed boss and driver both are exposed to the enemy, proving just how tough they are at braving incoming fire without so much as a flinch. Armed with an oversized boomstick, it is controlled by the War Trike's crew, and it shouldn't be underestimated. Discharged at point-blank range, these stubby weapons kick like a squiggoth, hit like a truck, and can rip an armored warrior in half with a single blast. The deafening roar of a boomstick being fired is so deeply satisfying to any greenskin in earshot, for it bespeaks of some serious DACA. The main danger posed by a Deathkiller War Trike comes from its monstrous passenger. An orc speed boss is a fearsome warrior at the best of times, but when mounted on the back of a hurtling trike, he becomes terrifying. With its oversized jet engine, the Deathkiller War Trike can run down even the swiftest of prey, leaving behind a burning trail of flame that sets enemies ablaze. Wheel side spinning, the trike rips a red path into the midst of the foe, where the bellowing speed boss quickly gets crumping. Sometimes a war trike simply plows headlong into the toughest looking enemy formation its driver can see, at which point the speed boss goes apeshit. Warriors are hurtled through the air like ragdolls, lifted from their feet and headbutted to death, or smashed into the floor by the enormous orc's clubbing overhand blows. The speed boss may even be overcome by the desire to give the enemy a good kicking, leaping down into their midst and going on a rampage before hopping back aboard the ride, slathered in blood and guts. In order to fight on the move without requiring the war trike to slow down, many speed bosses go to battle equipped with a much-feared snag claw. This piston-powered battle talon is every bit as vicious as a normal power claw, but has the additional benefit of mounting a barbed grapnel attached to a cannon and several dozen feet of heavy iron chain. This allows the speed boss to effectively harpoon victims as he zooms past, and either rip massive chunks out of them, or on a particularly good day, reel in his snagged victim and beat the shit out of him at close range. And then there are those callous speed bosses that have been known to fire their snag claws into a victim, and then forget to reel them in, leaving the target being chain-hauled helplessly across the battlefield at breakneck pace. It's an abuse that few foes can long survive. Deathkiller War Trikes are especially popular amongst the Goths and Evil Sun's clan. For the former, the appeal lies in getting to punch the enemy in the face as quickly as possible. The latter, meanwhile, prefers reaching the enemy as quickly as possible so as to punch them in the face. And such are the complex subtleties of greenskin culture. There is one orc in particular that made the Deathkiller War Trike notoriously feared throughout the galaxy, and that is speed boss Gut Rippa. Before Gut Rippa, the War Trike was just another ramshackled greenskin vehicle that was slightly more dangerous than a war bike, but when battlefield reports began to circulate amongst the Astra Militarum's high command of a crazed orc on a war trike that was targeting Imperial commanders and generals, the Imperium took notice. The fact that Gut Ripper would specifically target the most well-protected field commanders and successfully butcher his way through their bodyguards, capture the leader, and then drag him in front of his own men, while the armor and eventually the skin was peeled off their flesh, send shockwaves throughout the Imperial forces. Gut Ripper has become an expert at demoralizing the enemy. By targeting his foe's leadership, he effectively cuts the head off his prey, and then lets the warband butcher the rest of the helpless carcass. Gut Ripper learned this tactic very early on in his career. Like all successful orc bosses, he first had to kill hundreds of his own kind before he found a worthy alien enemy. During the early days, he perfected his proficiency with the Snagaclaw by targeting orc